Hey, howdy. This is Richard Eyre, alias Ricardo. Now that I live in New Mexico, I go under that handle. And I'm so happy and honored to be with you guys today and share some memories with you. I've been slicing bologna for 30 plus years as those poor people, customers who came to the nursery wanted to know about trees, and they know a lot about Richard Eyre. But my condolences. I was having fun. I have had a lot of fun in my life. And one of the reasons I did um, tell my stories is to remember my stories. And I have this unbelievable familial history. Um, and I never wanted to forget the great experiences that I've had throughout my life. And I always tried to make movies, and I I've had a lot of fun. And my world with Susan has only expanded my world, and we're off to the races on this new venture of creating a blog. So Susan always encouraged me to start in the beginning of my first remembrances. On my maternal side, my first remembrances would be of Oma's boarding house, and I was lucky enough to live within extended family there, and spent the most time with my great grandmother, born in 1861. I did sleep in the same bed with her till I was 5, so that's a lot of hours right there. And I spoke German as a child, but I've in my adult life have quickly forgotten it, although I'm drifting back in my remembrances now. uh, Germanic phrases or words will rush to the forefront, and I'll think in German before I think in Spanish or English. So uh, the aging process is unique and special. So I'll start in the beginning at Oma's boarding house on Willow Road in Elmhurst. uh, Towering giant elm trees lined the streets where, as kids, you could hit a baseball and you couldn't get it up into the canopy of the forest. It was a beautiful and unique home, and uh, uh, I remember it well. Oh, yes. It was a great experience for me. And uh, throughout my life, at various times, Grandma and Grandpa have lived with us, and their input was always very meaningful to me. And I've always told people my proudest moment is closing Grandma's eyes, being born at her house and dying at mine, and technically my mother's, but I was the mine, and me and Susie were the primary care people for the old timers, and we loved and cherished their experience. So, on my paternal side of the family, my first remembrance is going out to Wyoming and traveling with my grandfather to visit one of his old World War I buddies, a Crow chief who was had a summer camp on Pryor Mountain, the home of the wild horses out there on the Montana Wyoming line. And I remember sitting in this fellow's lap, although he had on jeans and a flannel shirt, probably, or whatever. There was no uh, Native American regalia on the chap. but it was a very memorable and thing for me, and I I've always cherished my time in Wyoming and with my extended family out there, and uh, Grandpa loved me maybe a little extra because my middle name was Warner, Richard Warner Eyre, and Grandpa uh, was very kind to me. Although my mother would be shocked what he exposed me to. Uh, Pouring shots and beers when you can barely shave is a little too much, but he said when he took me to the bar, this kid did a man's work today and he deserves a man's drink. Set him up with a shot and a beer. And he was a unique and special character, gassed in the First World War. He always would cough and spit for an hour, and he kept a 5-gallon bucket in the kitchen of his old house, tar paper shack, hauling his water from town. The once prosperous man who owned the first livery stop east of Cody, Wyoming, uh, along came forward with the Tin Lizzie, and that put the kibosh on these guys. I certainly will go back to my family in Elmhurst. And one memory that flashed in my mind now was from my Uncle Wally's movies of my mother, thin as a rail, coming home from the hospital where I was almost the lethal dose of. Uh, it was a very hard birth for her, and she never ever conceived again. And I always wanted a sister, and the folks did too, and they came close to adopting, I think, one time, but never happened. So let's start with my name. My name originated in 1066. The Eyre name originated in 1066. There was a Norman called True Love during the invasion of England and fighting at the Battle of Hastings alongside William the Conqueror. And if you Google my name, this story will come up, Eyre. And the the old boy True Love was deeply wounded in combat and had lost one leg in the fighting. Both he and William the Conqueror were unhorsed. William the Conqueror's helmet had been creased in battle, and he was gasping for breath. He was choking. And True Love crawled over to him and tore the helmet off of William the Conqueror. And William the Conqueror told him, "You give me air," much more guttural language at the time. He gave him land and title. And I believe that was in Lincolnshire, uh, in England, is where the Eyres came from. And we like the old yarn, of course. The one in at the formation of the Mormon religion, Dad's people were Mormon. They sent apostles out from Nauvoo, Illinois, to England and uh, Scandinavia, and they had very good recruitment. And they came back to Nauvoo, and Nauvoo had been burned by that time. And Brigham had taken the first load, and so John Eyre, um, signed up with Brigham and crossed the plains with him, pushing a handcart from Nauvoo, Illinois to Salt Lake City, Utah. There was an old grandpa with another John Eyre who was buried at Independence Rock on the Platte River in Wyoming in the 1840s. I can't remember. I should have that date down cold, but I don't. And of course, that wasn't that much after the time of the mountain men. So the Mormon trek was on the north side of the Platte River, and the Oregon Trail was on the south side. So after getting to Salt Lake, Brigham asked for volunteers. Well, that's kind of a misnomer. When Brigham asked you to do something, you did it. And they were sent down to the Parowan Valley in southeastern Utah. And they were teamsters and experts in the belly pan scrapers. And they dug the ditch for irrigation and roads and railroad right-of-ways and things like that. And there was some times, I think, John Eyre had 18 kids, I think it was. 13 lived to adulthood. And my line comes through Helaman Eyre, name uncommon, but part of the Mormon Bible, the Book of Mormon. And they farmed and stayed down there. And one of Helaman's brothers is credited with being one of the hole in the rock guys that blasted and chiseled away made a chute through solid rock to get a crossing on the Colorado River, the first crossing in 300 miles I've read. And they crossed over there and ended up settling Bluff and Mexican Hat, two still smaller towns there. Bluff with beautiful pictographs from the time of the native people. So that's the start on the Eyre yarn, getting them to Parowan. Then Brigham asked for volunteers again to go to north central Wyoming or northwestern Wyoming. And the family went up there and dug the ditch for the expanded water from Buffalo Bill Reservoir that created a mammoth irrigation capability there in the Bighorn Basin. Dad was born in Cowley in a log cabin, raised in Powell at their livery business till his, I would say, puberty or so. By then, well, that's about right. That would be after 29, and the Ford had come along with his Tin Lizzie, and there you go. They ended up in this tar paper shack and hauling their water from town. Very marginal place, and Dad was raised with a canvas lean-to that he had to stay in. And the time came when he'd make money by cowboying and do the roundup and go to the mountains and round up the steers for people in the fall. And he might miss some school there. And the major crop was sugar beets, and they'd missed some school there too. And Grandma was president of the school board. Grandpa, I think, was always a problem. He always had a problem with demon alcohol. And one time, one of the stories about Grandpa is he was out partying, and he had gotten one of the first cars in the state of Wyoming, and he had tipped the son of a gun over and almost killed the fellow he was with. And it ended up that the guy lived, and so they were out a few weeks or a month later, and they went to a Mormon social. Mormons don't drink, but they like to dance, and so this woman comes up and accosts Warner at this gathering of the saints, as they referred to themselves as the Latter-day Saints. And she said, "Warner, you dare to desecrate this gathering of saints with your public intoxication." And he said, "Woman, everyone here knows you're sleeping with a neighbor's husband, and you can take your church and your hypocrisy." And he walked out, and he never went back to the Mormon church. Now, his father was a patriarch in the Mormon church and would help young men on their vision. And his grandfather was in one of the original quorums of 70, which was the highest elective kind of branch of the Mormon church that elected the apostles and then the president. So he really broke the covenant when he did that. So soon thereafter, he went to the First World War, and I'll pick up the story there.